I hadn't been back to the family cabin in nearly 20 years. It sat deep in the woods of Cumbria, at the end of a twisting dirt track no one bothered to maintain. My parents stopped going when I was a teenager, claiming it was too far, too damp, too much hassle. But I always suspected it was something else, something they never told me. When my uncle died, the cabin officially became mine. It was a faded relic of old timber, rotting shingles, and glass that warped the light. I thought a weekend there might be peaceful, a chance to clear my head after a bad breakup. I loaded my car, ignored my mother's oddly sharp warning not to stay there after dark, and set off. The arrival. The track was worse than I remembered. Overgrown brambles scraped the car doors, and tree branches arched overhead like claws. By the time I reached the cabin, the sun was low, spilling orange light across the weathered porch. It looked exactly as it had in my childhood, except older. The front steps sagged, and the windows were clouded with grime. When I pushed the door open, a smell of damp wood and mold greeted me. Dust swirled in the dying light. Every creak of the floorboards echoed through the empty rooms. Inside, it was as if time had stopped. My grandfather's fishing gear still hung on the wall. A half-burned candle sat on the mantelpiece. A cracked armchair faced the fireplace. Yet something was off. The chairs were slightly angled toward each other, like people had just been sitting there. The bed upstairs was made with fresh sheets, though no one had been here in years. I told myself my uncle must have visited more recently than anyone realized. The first night, as darkness settled, the cabin grew unnervingly quiet. No wind in the trees, no owls, nothing. I built a small fire in the hearth, made a cup of tea on the old gas stove, and tried to read. But the silence pressed in. Every time I glanced at the window, I felt sure I'd see someone watching from the treeline. Around midnight, I heard its soft, deliberate footsteps upstairs. I froze. It wasn't the sound of the house settling. These were human steps, slow and measured, moving from one side of the upstairs landing to the other. I grabbed the torch from my bag and crept to the staircase. "Hello," I called, my voice shaking. No answer. The light from my torch quivered as I scanned the hallway upstairs. Empty. The bedroom door stood slightly ajar, but when I pushed it open, the room was just as I'd left it. I didn't sleep much after that. The marks. The next morning, I found something strange outside. In the mud just beyond the porch were footprints. Bare feet. They weren't mine. I'd been wearing boots. The prints led from the woods right up to the door, and then stopped. No returning prints. Just gone. I should have left then. Packed my bag, driven back to civilization. But curiosity rooted me there. I told myself it was just a trespasser, maybe someone from the nearest village. By late afternoon, the sky had turned a bruised gray, and rain started falling. I decided to fetch some firewood from the shed out back. When I slid the shed door open, my stomach clenched. Inside, on the dusty floor, were more footprints. Smaller this time, like those of a child. They circled the room, over and over, weaving between rusted tools and stacks of wood. The shed had been locked from the outside. The whispering. That evening, the wind returned, but it carried with it a faint whispering. At first, I thought it was the trees. But as I listened, I realized the sound was coming from inside the cabin. I followed it to the upstairs landing. It was louder there, as if the voices were just behind the walls. I could make out fragments. Don't look too late. My skin crawled. I pounded the wall with my fist. The whispering stopped instantly. Later, lying in bed, I woke to the distinct sensation of someone standing in the doorway. I didn't open my eyes at first. The floorboards creaked softly under weight that wasn't mine. When I finally looked, the doorway was empty. But I could still feel it, that sense of being watched. The truth in the basement. On the second day, I noticed something I'd forgotten. The trapdoor in the corner of the kitchen. My grandfather had once told me never to open it, claiming it was just storage. But now the air in the cabin felt heavier, as if the house itself wanted me to find it. The wood was swollen with age, but I prized it open. A set of steep steps led down into darkness. The smell hit me first, damp earth mixed with something metallic. Torch in hand, I descended. The basement was small, its walls made of stone. In the center sat a wooden chair, bound with frayed ropes. Around it, carved into the floor, were symbols I didn't recognize: circles, jagged lines, spirals. On the far wall hung photographs, old, yellowed images of my family. My parents, grandparents, and me as a child. In each photo, we were standing outside the cabin. But in every picture, there was a shadowy figure in the background. Tall, thin, face blurred. And in the last photograph, taken when I was about 10, the figure was closer. Standing right behind me, its hand almost on my shoulder. The last night, I went to bed early, determined to leave at first light. But the cabin had other plans. Around 2 a.m., I woke to the sound of breathing, deep, rasping, right beside the bed. I snapped my torch on. Nothing. Then the whispering returned, louder than before, a chorus of voices overlapping, rising and falling in a language I couldn't understand. The floorboards groaned. Something was moving in the hallway, its footsteps heavy and dragging. I heard it descend the stairs, cross the kitchen, and stop above the basement trapdoor. A long, drawn-out creak echoed through the cabin, wood bending under weight. Then silence. I held my breath. When I finally dared to move, I crept to the window. Outside, in the rain, just beyond the porch, stood a figure. Tall, thin, watching. Its head tilted slowly to one side. Then it took a single step forward, and the porch light flickered violently. I didn't wait to see what happened next. I grabbed my bag, bolted to the car, and tore down the track without looking back. Aftermath. It's been weeks since I left. I'm staying with a friend in Manchester, trying to forget. But some nights, when the wind is still, I hear the whispering again. Last night, I found mud on the floor beneath my bedroom window. Bare footprints. And this morning on my phone was a new photo in my gallery. It's me, asleep in bed. In the background, by the door, stands a tall, thin figure.